Figures and toys are something that I've fallen off of for quite some time. Less so because of lack of money and space, but really due to me being an angsty teen who cared too much about people judging me if they saw a Chun-Li figure on my windowsill. Now I'm at an age where I could care less what people think if I have a lot of figures. I'm already known as the girl with a ton of video game stuff. What are figures gonna do to move that needle? Seeing people share ones of their favorite fighters has made me extremely envious since the quality is much better in comparison to when I was collecting as a kid. I love immortalizing my video game collection by having it all on display, and I figured, why don't I do that with the characters I love now? Of course, not all of my faves and fighters are gonna get a figure, but thankfully there's tons of choices, whether it be the character or even the company, depending on the quality I'm looking for. Ever since that revelation, and now that I have adult money, I've since made up for lost time. Before my time collecting fighting game figures, or even just being alive, the genre was in a boom thanks to Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. These series were popular in the mainstream and everybody wanted to capitalize on it. I'm almost positive the first in Japan were Street Fighter, but the first in the West were made by Hasbro. They used their G.I. Joe toy line to make Street Fighter 2 toys, and in some cases they even used the same mold, just changing the head and paint color. The Hollywood movie essentially was a G.I. Joe film, and I think that's no coincidence. The film and show were meant as a vehicle to mostly sell toys. As someone who didn't grow up with these, G.I. Joes always came off as cheap for me. They don't seem painted too well and the plastic seems fragile. I'm assuming it was on purpose since these were meant to be a cheaper toy for boys and they were made to have a lot of them. Many of these came with vehicles that were never even used in the game or movie. Having a toy slap with a vehicle and some weapons, I assume, made it look more appealing to kids. They also had a championship edition by having the same figures in a new color, making kids think this was a whole new thing in the cheapest way possible. This wasn't just a G.I. Joe thing though, toy companies all over do this very frequently. The other mega hit fighter, Mortal Kombat, also got the G.I. Joe treatment. The quality is about the same, but they do look slightly more accurate to the characters than they did for Street Fighter. Perhaps it's because the first Mortal Kombat's character designs were more simplistic? Or maybe it's because there are a lot more characters that tote guns and drive vehicles with the Special Forces characters than just Street Fighter's Guile and Chun-Li. Even with Chun-Li, she was packing heat as a cop, but not like this. I'm sure Hasbro was stoked that these ninjas could all use the same mold and be considered a different character. I have a bit of a history with fighting game figures, and I grew up with a wide net of quality among them. Most of these came from the American store KB Toys. I remember how obsessed I was with Tekken and how badly I wanted those figures. I was so desperate, I even pretended the Gundams I had were Tekken characters. I mean, this guy kinda looks like Heihachi, right? On one fateful day, I finally found Tekken figures at a KB Toys, and I'm sad to say these were disappointing. Even as a kid, I felt this way. I use the term toy loosely since these walk a fine line between toy and statue. These barely moved and came with accessories that the figure couldn't even really hold on to. I personally had the Huarang and Anna figures and they couldn't even move their arms. At most you could turn the head or wrist, but that was it. This Yoshimitsu figure I got for the video probably moves the most out of all the ones I've seen. I don't know what the thought process was here. Maybe these were meant for teens that were too cool for a proper articulate toy, so you got a half step of a statue that could barely move instead. This company, Epoch, also did Soul Calibur 1 and Dead or Alive 2 figures, but it seems they made these a bit more posable. Toys I had much more affinity with growing up were the Marvel vs. Capcom line. These came in pairs of two, of one Capcom and one Marvel character. The pairings were very random, but I have a conspiracy theory they paired one character the company thought was gonna sell well with one that they thought wasn't. That way, they could pair them up and sell them both. That theory holds less water when I see Strider with Spider-Man though. But something I liked as a kid was just having decent figures of these characters, since some of these weren't gonna get another figure for a very long time. Later on, I discovered there was even an X-Men vs. Street Fighter line before this, which is where I got a Chun-Li figure. This line had recolors too, with some new pairings, but they didn't recolor every figure. Several of these included props that the character could use or head effects like for Akuma's Fireball. The inside of the package also included a cardboard cutout of a stage from the game as an awesome backdrop. I loved this and stared at these for a good while to see if there were details I missed from playing the game. Perhaps this helped start my obsession with stages. With the Shotos, they had a real cloth gi top that I remember immediately losing. It was cool they even had it since it could have just been an ugly plastic shell. As a kid, I remember that in each package of 2, one of the figures' quality was clearly better than the other. For example, in the Strider and Spider-Man pack, Strider was awesome and articulate and had 2 of his weapons removable. Spider-Man looked good, but was stuck in the pose with his elbow bent. Strider could bend his elbow and with a push of a button could move his wrist rapidly. Spider-Man didn't have any of that, and I always got the feeling was from another toy line and they just included it in a 2-pack to sell more. The Mega Man figure was too loose feeling, and trying to move it felt like getting a puppet without strings to stand. The War Machine one, even though he wasn't colored like the game, was a much better quality figure. I could go on, and I feel this way about pretty much every single figure in both lines. Damn shame that the future MVC toys were such a letdown. When Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released, we had these fake-ass LEGO figures paired up instead. They also did this for Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and I was bitter they weren't like the last ones, or at least cool statues. Later, these were made worse, fittingly by Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and Funko Pops. Need I say more? Funko Pops I refuse to have in my home on principle, and I'm surprised people still seem to be obsessed with them. These don't look cute or cool, just your favorite characters with black, beady, soulless eyes and goofy heads. Why couldn't we all be obsessed with Nendoroids? At least those are cute chibi versions of characters versus these soulless creepy ones. I thought the bubble would pop sooner or later, but I still see them in every pop culture store I walk into. People keep asking for KB toys to come back, but you gotta see that monkey's paw on that wish, right? We all know that if KB were around today, it's gonna be nothing but Funkos. The Marvel Legends lines gave me false hope that this would go back to the glory days. We had a pack with Mega Man X and Iron Man, and another with Ryu with Black Widow. Black Widow is a weird pick, but it is reminiscent of the good figure, bad figure theory I had growing up. The quality is vastly improved, but no stage background this time. These were also much smaller than the previous ones, almost G.I. Joe size. Unfortunately, this was it for the MVC series. It was part of a sub-series of Marvel Legends called Marvel Legends Gamerverse. I guess this wasn't meant for anything more than a flash in the pan, which is a pity. I refuse to open these, mostly because once I do, it's no longer MVC, it's just a lame Black Widow and Ryu figure at that point. Sealed, it shall stay. Even recently, some Marvel characters got statues with colors reminiscent of how they looked in Marvel vs. Capcom, making this a continuation in the Gamerverse sub-series. They couldn't acknowledge the Capcom part, but it's heavily implied it's from MVC. These are a bit too expensive for me, but the quality seems excellent. In a similar vein as the X-Men vs. Street Fighter and MVC 1 toy line, Darkstalkers 3 also had a run where there were 2 figures in one package. This was a bit different in that it was one regular-sized character paired with a smaller one. BB Hood and John Talbane look pretty good here and are packed with a bunch of accessories. But in the Dimitri and Lilith pack, what happened to Lilith? She is way too short and looks like a 10-year-old. They only had 3 packs in the whole line, and I'm assuming these were geared towards boys. There is no Morgan, Felicia, or Hisenko figures. But it's ultimately no biggie since they certainly made up for lost time since then. A series with toys that I own and had no clue were based on a fighting game until much later was Primal Rage. My parents just bought them for me because they were dinos and animals. I didn't play the game until much later in life. These were also at KB Toys, but not positive if they were exclusive there. This packaging is sick, by the way. It's very attention-grabbing, which I know is the point, but the Primal Rage theming comes across really well. These figures I always thought were great, and each one had a little gimmick that they could do. Like Vertigo could squirt out water, Diablo could shoot out fireballs, etc. The Blizzard and Chaos ones had hair that felt like those little troll dolls, and that's a cute touch. Accessories were also included, but for some characters, I never felt like they fit the theme. There'd be armor or weapons that they never had in game, like Diablo having metal feet. I did like the little worshipper one though. These guys would move around during a fight, and it's cool that they were included too as someone to eat or stomp on. But there was one figure that always confused me. Slash Fang, a saber-toothed tiger dude I never remember being in the games. Was he like a secret character that I just missed? Turns out he was actually a character cut from Primal Rage, and I suppose they'd already made the toy at that point, so why waste that work? If anything, it just added to his mystery. He was a fully playable fighter in Primal Rage 2, but Slash Fang was robbed again since that game was cancelled. Funnily enough, they advertised Primal Rage 2 on the packaging. Looks like they jumped the gun on that one. I pity the kids that learned of this sequel just to wait forever and find out that it's never coming out. Slash Fang in an official capacity is only a toy. But at least he had that. Cheaper toys nowadays seem to have improved in quality by a wide margin, at least based on the examples that I've seen. These Tekken toys made by Game Dimension seem pretty impressive for their price. Of course, they're far less detailed, but they seem pretty articulate. It's obvious what makes a figure like this different than a higher end one. But if you're a kid and it's gonna get played with a lot, this is certainly a better option than what I had. These Street Fighter toys, at first glance, could be mistaken for a higher end figure. I can't believe the low price point on these given this level of detail. I mean, Bison's pants even have texture to them. I don't know how people feel about this, but if I were a kid and had toys on this level, I'd be ecstatic. Street Fighter even has collabs with more than Marvel and SNK for figures. They have a line with TMNT, Power Rangers, and even Transformers. I've never had Transformers before, but I like trying to switch them from human to car form and vice versa without looking at the instructions. It kind of feels like a puzzle. Figures geared more towards display, which appeal to an older crowd, are bigger than ever and not just relegated to the dark corners of a comic book store. I'm referring to those mostly meant to be posed and displayed. SH Figure Arts are a toy line owned by Bandai, and this is one of the better companies for these types of figures in my opinion. From what I've seen, SH mostly has done Street Fighter characters. The designs are also usually just based on Street Fighter 2. I get that it's the most recognizable, but I'd love for them to mix it up every now and then with an alternate costume from the later games. They only recently did a Tekken line, which is surprising since they own Tekken. You'd think they would do that more often. Regardless, these are fantastic and have this sheen that makes them look sleek. These types of figures usually have multiple heads and hands to help perfect whatever pose you want them in, which is much easier than making figures of this size have articulation since they wouldn't last too long. That's not to say I don't get a wee bit terrified of taking off parts to switch them out, since I'm scared I'll break it. Sadly, they don't have a stand to help stabilize whatever wacky pose you have them in. For this Chun-Li one, they do kind of have one for her kick effect prop, but it's still pretty hard to get her firmly in place. This prop also feels like raw penne, by the way. Not a negative, just an observation. Todd McFarlane's toy line is no stranger to fighting games. Soul Calibur 2 featured his poster boy Spawn and an original character made by Todd named Netgrid. I doubt he even remembers who this guy is, but I thought he was cool, damn it. I don't know if this toy line deal came first and then Spawn was a guest, or if this was a condition of Spawn being a guest. Either way, these were detailed, smaller statues of a few of the characters from Soul Calibur 2. I'm glad they chose Necrod's alternative outfit since I think it's way better than his default. I wonder if Todd felt the same way and it's why it was used for the figure instead. Nightmare in particular has a weird pose on the back of the box. He almost looks shocked while holding Soul Edge, like his mind is being blown. I think his arm is meant to be cocked back like he's about to do a heavy hit, the problem being the sword won't stay in his hand because it falls out. Maybe the marketing guys realized this and changed the pose to this awkward thrusting one instead. I really regret not getting all of these when I saw these on clearance at stores back in the day, since I feel there's barely any Soul Calibur merch at all. McFarlane's company also had Spawn appear in MK11 after much fan outcry. This also followed a toy line. These felt like proper figures since they could move way more, but the movement always felt a bit stiff. I don't know, maybe it's just the figure that I happen to have, but the detail was insane at least. It came with a tiny stand, but I think it's the lamest one ever and doesn't feel structurally sound. Interestingly, this line did a couple of Spawn ones and the Joker. Cool that the guest characters got attention too. My main gripe with this line is that they did alternate colors for some of the characters, but they sometimes chose the ugliest palettes possible. I don't know what the decision process was for these colors, and it's no wonder they go for way cheaper than the normal ones in the secondhand market. Based on this pattern, if Spawn is a guest in another fighter, expect McFarlane to do the game's toy line. Figma is another company recognized as a quality figure manufacturer, and they'll pretty much make a figure of anything. They haven't done too much in the fighting game category from what I've seen though. A couple of KOF ones and a pair of Virtua Fighter 1 figures. I love the sorta old school blocky look to these though, and I wish we had more of them. I'd love a PS1 graphic Kazuya figure. With Figma, I'm grateful they always seem to include a stand. There's a small hole in the figure's back, and the stand is very stable, which makes it much easier to do poses of characters jumping or standing on one leg. PlayArts is owned by Square Enix, and it shows when it comes to their prices. These always go for quite a bit, and anytime I go on eBay to get one secondhand, I always gotta be wary of fakes. If the price seems way too low to be true, it probably is. The scale is much bigger than the average figure, and the detail is next level. I'm assuming that's what's contributing to that high price. Being a Square Enix company, no shock they do Final Fantasy figures all the time. The fighting spin-off series Dissidia got a run through PlayArts, and it's mostly an excuse to just release figures of classic protagonists throughout the series. My biggest regret is seeing a Lightning figure in the Square Cafe for cheaper than usual, and thinking, oh, I'd get it at some other store later, not knowing that'd be the last time I'd ever see it at a reasonable price. PlayArts also dabbled in other fighters like Tekken, with Kazuya and Jun around the time of Tekken Tag 2's release. The company that lit the figure collector in me all over again has gotta be Storm Collectibles. These guys have a wide variety of IPs they've worked with and have probably covered the most fighting games out of anyone. Street Fighter is a given, but they also did Fatal Fury, KOF, World Heroes, Virtua Fighter, Darkstalkers, Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat, EX Layer, and Tekken. Mortal Kombat, these guys do a lot of. These are great, and it's awesome to have so many fighting game characters to pick from. They can run a bit expensive secondhand, so I recommend hopping on pre-orders for characters you'd want if possible. This King one I have is one of my favorites. He's a good chonky size. His boots and cape are made of this rubbery material, and so are his pecs. I don't know why this detail is here, but it's awesome nonetheless. Probably the company I would recommend above all others, at least for the sheer choice in what they have. Unshockingly, there were barely any fast food toys for any of these series. Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were the biggest players during the fighting game boom, and no shit, MK wasn't gonna get a McDonald's line. Something called Street Fighter probably didn't help it get any deals. The only fast food series I've seen surprisingly has a larger part within Street Fighter history. The chain Jollibee had a kids' meal toy Street Fighter, which were the boys' toys, while the girls had Totally Spies. Each set had 3 toys of each. For Street Fighter, it was Ryu and Ken, but also a very familiar Blanka one. The same Blanka figure Yoshinori Ono would use in many a photo when he teased something or announced he's in a certain location, etc. This toy is even immortalized in a stage in Street Fighter Cross Tekken as well. Well, ain't that something? What about toys that actually interact with games? Amiibos were seen as Nintendo's spin on the Toys to Life fad that was going on at the time. Unlike Disney Infinity and Skylanders though, these are still being sold, although now it's much more sparse than what it used to be. Amiibos came from Smash Bros on Wii U and were all designed to look like characters on trophies, which was enough to sell me on it. I love collecting trophies in Smash, and having a physical version of that of everyone in the main cast was too cool to pass up. I bought Marth and then Wii Fit Trainer and told myself I wasn't gonna get any more. The Amiibo craze did get the better of me though, and I ended up getting pretty much the entire Smash line. Anytime there was an alternate variant of a figure I was gonna get for my Smash collection, I usually got the variant since those poses seemed so much cooler, like for Samus and Chrom. As Smash Ultimate continued releasing characters, I was stoked that Terry and Kazuya were gonna get Amiibos as well. There were 5 fighting game characters that got Amiibos, 6 if you're trying to get me to roll my eyes. These characters only really have a use in Smash Ultimate. You train an AI ghost of the character to play somewhat like you, and these can be really challenging to fight against and can make for a decent training partner. That's it though. There's no Mario Maker version of these guys, no Yoshi's Woolly World outfit, or Animal Crossing Villager. You're buying these because they look cool on a shelf, not to get some crazy hidden DLC. I know Amiibo releases are few and far between these days, but I hope the next Smash can revitalize the Amiibo fever by just a little. Since I don't own every fighting game figure ever, and this video is honestly getting expensive enough as is, I want to ask some other people what figures they personally have, keeping in the theme of fighting games, and also covering some more obscure pieces that I didn't even know existed.
Yo, I'm GuileWinQuote, and I own a bunch of stuff, so let's go through it. So since I own a bunch of big fighting game stuff, I gotta balance that out by owning a bunch of small fighting game stuff. So I own a bunch of these old Street Fighter Bandai Gachapons that I think are really cool. They start from the Alpha series and go up to Street Fighter 3 New Generation, and I just love how stylized they are and how many different characters we have. I can't imagine how cool it would have been to be a kid and see these in person and actually get these from an actual Gachapon machine. Some of these are a little strange though, like we have white Dudley and white Super Saiyan Sean. I don't know where their melanin went, but maybe Akuma stole all of it. But in the same vein, I also have a bunch of old keychains, which include Vampire or Darkstalkers keychains too. Here we have white Donovan, again, for some reason. My favorite character is Fish, or Albath, or Rikuo, whatever you want to call him. So I'm trying to be the #1 fish collector in the world. So I have a Midnight Bliss fish and an acrylic Stanta fish. I can't imagine anyone else bought this but me. But I also have these really cute Vampire Hunter plush keychains. I mean, forget Morgan, forget Shinko, look at this dude. This is amazing. I also have probably the first piece of fish merchandise, which is this 1994 Vampire Super Deformed Chibi keychain. Pretty cool. But my most prized fighting game figure possession has to be this 1993 Ryu doll, who has like real cloth for his gi. It's basically like a Barbie G.I. Joe kind of thing, so you can get Ryu's butt if you want. But it's just amazing to me that something so high quality like this existed all the way back in 1993. And if they made figures like this now, I would probably buy the whole cast. I just love it so much. It's so posable, there's so much articulation. This figure is super premium and is probably older than most people watching this video. This rules. I love it so much. And one more thing, I also have these Street Fighter Online Mouse Generation figures, which were made for a game that was a crossover between Capcom and Revoltech, who made these figures. And it was basically an online fighting game that you use a mouse and you use action figures to fight. It's lost media at this point, and I'll probably never be able to play it. But just in case I am ever to play it, I bought these figures, so maybe one day I can make a video on it. I don't know. Someone please dump it so I don't look stupid for buying this. I love consumerism. Thank you.
Hey, what's up guys, Rome himself here, and I'll show you the few figurines that I have. Starting off, while this isn't directly fighting game related, a good friend of mine's named J-Dash got me this really sweet Axel Streets of Rage 4 figurine from Storm Collectibles. Got it for me for my birthday, I believe 2021. And after getting this one, you know, while I still have it boxed, I can still appreciate just how detailed it is, how the actual item is branded. And while yes, this is a figure that you would just want to put up in a display case, I could totally see this being a nice high grade action figure and playing with it as a kid. The first one I got, of course, had to be the homeboy Terry Bogard. This is the green Terry ult from King of Fighters 1998. And I got this from Anime Next a few years ago. It was actually on the Sunday when the prices for items are going down. And I believe I got this for $85, which in my eyes is a steal. These next few I got from the Storm Collectibles website. First with the blue Hawamaru skin from Samurai Showdown 2019. And you can see that sign up top that says exclusive, baby. After that, we got the World Heroes Perfect Fuma. This was a figure I would have never seen anyone else make because World Heroes has been a dormant IP for so long, but again, Storm Collectibles holding us down with even the most niche fighters. And lastly, you know I had to get the boy Iori Yagami in the iconic purple skin color from KOF 98. This might as well be his optimal player 2 color. It's been around in so many of the fighting games that Iori has been in. As you can see, these are all boxed up because I don't have the place to put them. I have a bunch of posters and plushies around here that aren't fighting game related. But eventually, I will get a nice display case to show them all off in their best way. That's all I have for figurines, but here's a lightning round of fighting game memorabilia that means a lot to me. Last year, a coworker got me this Terry Bogard bobblehead for Christmas because they oversaw me watching Fatal Fury in the break room, and they were like, oh, I recognize that guy. And of course, we all do. Everyone knows Terry Bogard. Here's a Donovan keychain that I got from, I want to say Evo, but at the same time, I'm not sure. I think it was also a gift from another friend. And lastly, the most rarest fighting game memorabilia that I have is this Fatal Fury City of the Wolves button that I got directly from SNK themselves. To my knowledge, there's only a few of these in the world. Like I'm talking sub 100, maybe sub 50. So this is kind of rare and maybe one of the first few videos to show it off. And I'm very proud that I have this.
For me, it's difficult to choose just one figure as my favorite because, you know, you can see all these many many figures where I've definitely gone too far in a few places. I mean, I have a Funko collection of Mortal Kombat down there. I mean, you probably look at this vast collection and think, wow, with so many figures, how can you possibly get laid? And that's the neat part. But instead of finishing an overdone meme that you already know the punchline of 2 words in, I'm going to instead talk about the Mortal Kombat figures by Jazzwares, specifically those from the 3D era. These figures came at a time when MK had not had any figures in years and years. So starting things off with a set for Deception, the best entry, with 4 iconic characters in some of their best designs, was certainly a good way to win fans over. Certainly won me over. I have a very distinct memory from 2004 or so when I was around 13. I was out shopping with my dad and my brother, and we went to this place that had a bunch of figures, like these ones, also, you know, Marvel, DC and stuff like that. There was even a Shredder figure from TMNT, I think from the 2003 show, and I was tempted to get that just so I could pretend it was Deception Sub-Zero in all his Shredderish glory. And then I saw the full set of these. Deception's, you know, the best entry in the series, and I'd never been as hyped for a game as I was for Deception, so I was eager to get these because I was mad on MK back then, even more so than now, arguably. You know, my dad said no. I was a very upset 13-year-old, let me tell you that. Later I found out the reason he said no was that he'd already bought them for me for Christmas, the whole set. And yeah, I'm telling a bunch of strangers this on the internet, Papa. I'm a petty and vindictive man, and I will never let this go. From there, the company made sets for Shaolin Monks, Armageddon, and even MK9 before the license went to the likes of Funko. I got what I could, and I even had them in the background of my early MK videos, including my original MK9 teardown in 2012. These little guys have been with me for over half my life at this point, and that's why the Mortal Kombat 3D era Jazzwares figures, also Johnny Cage is there, he gets a free pass, he's Johnny Cage. That's why they are my favourite fighting game figures of all time.
Oh shit, no. Aww. What is up, Matt McMuscles here, and when Babe Ruthless asked me to show off some fighting game merchandise, well, how could I refuse that? Starting off, we have this little arcade nook that I got, Killer Instinct, the really outdated Marvel Superheroes cabinet. We don't really need that anymore. Anyway, here is my kind of little, I guess, homage to fighting games, arcade culture, you should say. Lots of little doodads, pins. Over here we have like a selection of stickers and keychains that I've gotten at Evo. Here in the middle is a Final Fight marquee light box that two friends of mine customized and made for me, which I'm very, very appreciative of. Now, I know Guts up there in the Berserker armor doesn't really jive with the rest of the things going on, but I mean, he needed a place. So we have a few other, like, maybe slightly non-fighting gamey things. We got like this melty George from Rampage. We've got Akira, some keychains from 86. This great little trio of the heroes that saved our city. I just recently got those. Love them. I wish they were a bit bigger. They're like 3 inches tall, and you know, everyone prefers over 6 inches, so I thought that would be good. This is a vintage, I believe, Sarah Bryant that I got at Evo just this past year. So Sailor Mars, she's in fighting games. Shut up, she's there. The Geese is also a fairly new addition, and little Benny, of course. I love Kintaro, one of my favorite Mortal Kombat bosses. That's why he's there. This is the voice-activated Shadow Jago, or just regular Jago, I should say. If you place this near your KI 2013 game, PC version, or Xbox, whatever, as long as it could be heard, certain sound effects in that game would cause him to shout like Endo Kuken, or like, you know, various voice clips. I think it would say Combo Breaker too. I can't really remember. It's been a while since I've done that, because I think he may have stopped working. We have a, you know, KI merch is not easy to get nowadays, especially new KI merch. So this is the Fulgore from Pop Culture Collectibles, I think. You know, you could have opted to get this in a couple different colors. I wish his eyes lit up Like in this light, it looks pretty dull, I know, but that's one thing I would really wish they had done with this particular piece. But he's still really cool. I hope they come out with like an Orchid or a Jago at some point. Right over here we have Saberwolf. This is actually a repaint. I thought I had ordered, it might have been an error on my part, might have been an error on shipping, but this actually came in like a black and white like shadow edition. But I wanted this KI2 colored Saberwolf, and he did not come like that at all. So I found a Warcraft nerd in my local area that does painting, and he'd take it on. So he did a great job. Like he was able to get the metallic coating of the arms right because they were silver when he got them. So this is one of my favorite pieces. Again, I think it's from Pop Culture Collectibles. Hope I'm saying that right. Here's my little poison area. I have the Bishojo poison there, and again, I think it's Pop Culture Shock. This is slightly outdated poison. They came out with a newer version that kind of fits with better shading, and I think it's supposed to be like a cross Tekken sort of thing. Her riding crop is a little wobbly. She's put to a lot of good use. But yeah, this is one of my favorites because always will collect anything poison or poison related. So down here we have a selection of Bisojos. You see we have Jury, we have Chunners, Morgan of course. Yeah, and Jolene counts too, and yeah, Jotaro counts too. Why not? They're in fighting games. So yeah, I love Bishojos. I don't collect every single one, just the characters I really like. You know, I'm not really for the Star Trek or the weird Transformers ones. Not the biggest fan. And this is actually a pop-up parade jury because the Bishojo jury is right over here. So we got her, we got Terry, of course, and oh my, speaking of my, she is so big, she is so girthy, this weighs a lot, so that's why she's up there. I used to have it where the Saberwolf was, but they were just sort of getting in the way. All the translucent fire, I really wish that lit up too. Seems like a, you know, bit of a missed opportunity, but whatever. And here we have a random Felicia, because why not? This is a bit on the old school side. I think I got this around 2004, 2005 at a hobby shop, and she's never left my side since. She has like this weird squashed ass though, so I don't know what that's about. And of course, Aramika, and Aramika Jr. The Bishojo Aramika is really cool because she's in the middle of cutting a promo. Unfortunately, one of this bigger Aramika's pigtails fell off. It's somewhere back there, and I just haven't had a second to find it. But that's the life when you're a collector. Sometimes mistakes happen, and you're too lazy to fix them. Anyway, that's my collection, and I hope you enjoyed. And thanks again to Babe Ruthless for having me on.
It's interesting to see between all the fighting game series who has the most figures and toys. For Tekken, shockingly, they didn't really go full throttle on merch in general, let alone figures, even after the mega hit that was Tekken 3 dropped. It's much better now, but it was certainly a slow crawl to get here. SNK series like Fatal Fury, Samsho, and KOF have quite a bit throughout its history, but those are mostly released in Japan compared to Mortal Kombat that rarely released their figures in Japan. MK is still much more prominent when it comes to the figures they had. That being said, I think Street Fighter might have the biggest presence in the figure collecting space among all the fighting game franchises. Street Fighter seems to spread itself out and collab with everyone. They had figures with a majority of the manufacturers we discussed earlier. They've sold figures since the release of Street Fighter 2 globally. They collab with other IPs like Marvel, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, and Transformers. Street Fighter seems to be the dominant IP when it comes to making toys and figures, at least in quantity. I know not every toy line in existence was mentioned, but as someone who was out of the figure game for a while, it was really nostalgic looking back at the past, comparing what I had grown up to what's available now. I gotta say it's better than it's ever been. Even when fighting games were in their popularity boom of the early 90s, the quality of figures were pretty low. The final frontier would be for any of these series to get a Lego set. If something like Overwatch and Horizon can get one, why not Tekken and Street Fighter? I feel figures truly celebrate a character's design and immortalize them in the eyes of the collector. As a kid, even though I was just banging away with my toys and putting them through the ringer, naturally I became more attached to certain characters because I had figures of them growing up. I made a connection with them in the game, which then incentivized me to dive deeper, whether it be into their backstory, lore, or gameplay. Figures have come to represent another aspect of my love of fighting games, much like my love for cosplay, which allows myself to attach to these characters even further. While figures may seem like a waste of money and space to those who don't collect, to me and many others, it's our way of celebrating the characters we love.